know what Sonder is? No? Well, you should. And that's why we have Gil here today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, why this topic matters to him, and why it should matter to you. Gil, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me so much. My name is Gil Cohen. I'm a people at work consultant out of the Greater Toronto area. Sonder, to give you a definition, because I never have it memorized, but I have it on my phone. Oh, no, I lost it. Okay, sorry,
Ad
regardless.
lib, we've got
Ad-
it. This is actually a really great example.
I'll
I
go.
think
Sorry.
I think this is a really great example of Sonder, almost to a certain degree, an example where it can be applied. So go ahead, give your.
Sonder is essentially the idea that each person has their own intricate thoughts, experiences, histories, needs, wants that are all around us constantly, that we're not necessarily aware of, that we are all sometimes just a bit part in each other's lives and each other's stories. At heart, the idea promotes the concept that we're all the protagonists of our own story. We're all the center of our own story, but the reality is, because of that, we end up being blind to other people and their stories. And that becomes even more so at work, when we end up centering the company or the organization that we're working for instead of the individuals we're working with.
Well, who needed a phone definition? I'm just saying that was amazing. And as you were saying that, I thought, oh, I think I have the definition here somewhere as well. And I think one of my favorite parts of it, and I think you agree, is the idea that it presents in one of our shared definitions. I think it says here, the realization that each random passerby, is this the one you remember? Is living a life as vivid and as complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you, like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with the elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, or as a blur of traffic passing in the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. Isn't that beautiful? And
Poetry.
it is. It truly is. And I wish I'll cite this because I do have it somewhere, but I'll cite this when we go on. Somebody else wrote that. It was not me. I just read it. And it's just this concept when it comes to work, in the work dynamic, in any sort of corporate setting, as an entrepreneur, showing up and marketing yourself in a world of busy consumers. This is an important aspect that needs to be considered. But how do you start? How do you even start to conceptualize applying that in your day-to-day?
It starts with awareness. It starts with a recognition that each person is living their own life, has their own thoughts and needs beyond what you see. Before we go on to that, I do want to just comment that one thing that struck me in that, when you were reading it to me, that I haven't really noted on before, and I've read and heard that many, many times. I love the universality of the inherited craziness. That statement right there, that we've all got that. We've all inherited some level of craziness to us, and we're all trying to make our way through the day through that. I really appreciate that. But it starts with an awareness, and it starts with a reframing.
Hmm.
I had a friend and colleague who recently reminded me of this great definition he gave me of organizations a while ago, which gets at the heart of that, which is that normally when we think of the definition of an organization, it's a group of people who come together for a greater goal or a common goal. It's similar to a teams kind of thing, right? It's people who come together, use their skills to achieve something greater. But again, that centers the team, or it centers the organization. A better definition for it, and a more accurate definition for it, is a group of individuals, each with their own wants, needs, and desires, who come together, who believe that working toward this greater goal will help them achieve their individual wants, needs, and desires. And that's never going away. That's even in companies, even in organizations where people are there for the purpose, who care about the purpose, there are still an internal drive that's being served by being there. And ultimately, we are all seeking to achieve that. And understanding that that is at the heart of people's motivation. The company or the organization doing well isn't necessarily the heart of most people's motivation, but understanding that they're coming there from their own angle for their own purposes, and they're doing it not so the company can achieve its goals, but so that they can achieve their goals. And whatever that may be part and parcel the company doing it, that may be helping other people achieve it. We all have our own drives and needs, but that's what it is in reality. We may like to think we're all there for the company's sake, and we may treat people that way, but that's not why people are there. That's not why the individuals are there. They're there because, well, we need a job. And I think there is something within our human nature of it serving us and having a job and being able to earn our way toward what we have. But we're not there for the company's sake. We're there for our sake first and foremost. And as leaders, when leaders treat it as if the company is the protagonist of the story, they miss the mark and they miss the motivation of the individuals who should be serving.
Absolutely. And I think I as you were speaking, I'm thinking it's really the company is a means to an end, even for the person who started the company. And this brings us over into the world of, like myself, entrepreneurship. Whether you're a solopreneur or whether you are the leader of a small team or even a medium to large team, your business and what you're doing on the day to day is a means to an end. Could I choose a different means? Absolutely. And I'd probably be awesome because you work towards that thing based on your intrinsic motivation, which would be your values, your personal ambitions. I want to make an impact on the world. Okay. How do you want to do that? Speaking, writing, singing. I don't know. Like you could list innumerable ways. Volunteerism, right? Anything, all of these different means to an end. And the end is that personal drive to make an impact on the world. Doesn't matter what it is. And yours can be different than Joe's, can be different than Sally's, can be different than who knows. And that's just because all of your stories are different. And all of them, every last one of them, no matter whether you're the CEO or the janitor, no matter whether you're a startup or you've been in business for decades, all of it comes with that inherent craziness that we talked about from the beginning. And understanding that gives us a deeper level of empathy, a deeper level of understanding about the world as we navigate it and how we can respond to it in a way that helps not just ourselves to be the better protagonist in our own story, but also helps us to leverage the unique position each individual has in our lives to our mutual understanding, to our mutual goals. I don't know. I feel like this is also brain gymnastics, Gil.
You spoke to something that, unfortunately, for some people is brain gymnastics, but can be made more concrete, which is around the values, right? And around entrepreneurs and the values. That's something I've been working with through my career, helping companies, solo entrepreneurs up through larger experienced organizations, helping them articulate their values. Because what happens is the entrepreneur sets their values intentionally or otherwise into what they do. They will behave consistently with their values because that's what they believe in. That's why, to avoid the gymnastics and to create the mutual understanding, having those values clearly articulated and not in just a phrase or two, but in actual behavior so people understand this is what it looks like when someone lives those values.
Right.
That is one of the way that Sonder of the founder or founders, it ends up actually scaling across the organization because their values become imprinted across the organization. And one of the things that I don't necessarily always talk about with clients or whatever, but it's something that's often in the back of my mind. You talk about that inherited craziness and the psychology also of the founders. How many founders have created certain types of cultures because they needed validation from others? Right?
Right.
Because they sought that, or because they sought a certain type of risk in the way their drives were. It's not necessarily a value of theirs, but it's a drive of theirs to seek out risk, or different ways that people have individual differences that determine how they behave. But they need, the more you're intentional about it, the more you're clear about it, the more you share with others, that's how you can match somebody else's protagonist story. Because if you as an entrepreneur, you as a leader say, these are my curbstones, these are my values in which we in this organization are going to behave, then other people who already live those values, who are already drawn to those values, will want to work there, and you'll be able to find them. And in a good way, you'll push people away because Sonder is one of my values in my company. If you're the type of person that is more focused on other areas of the business that aren't human centric, and I'm not saying that negatively, I'm saying that
Oh,
in reality, not everybody thinks like me. I appreciate that. As someone very smart taught me a few years ago, stop expecting yourself from others. I appreciate that. But somebody like that isn't going to be drawn to my values.
right.
Somebody like that isn't going to be drawn to my values. Somebody who is looking for a very stable organization, consistent process, consistent behaviors, or consistent reduced risk, isn't going to want to work at a company that has innovation as a value.
That's a
And
good
they
point.
shouldn't. And the company that has innovation as a value should feel no shame for that, and they should wear it proudly. That, you know what, some people are going to love it, and some people are going to love working here, and some people aren't. That is the one area, because I know for me, diversity is an incredibly important topic. DEIB, all of that is an incredibly important topic. This is the one area within organizations where I don't argue for diversity, because diversity among values creates the stress in the lack of clarity and expectation that allows people the psychological safety and the consistency to do well at work. And you can have, and I've seen, you can have tremendous diversity in a variety of different ways, great equity, including all people feeling that level of belonging, while maintaining that. And one could even argue that having those consistent set of values and those curbstones allows those other things to become easier, because it
Right.
allows you to make decisions. If these are our values, and that's one of the ways to eliminate the mental gymnastics, is leaders running decisions through the values, looking at it, saying, we have option A or option B. Which one does one of them break our values?
Hmm.
A lot of companies were faced with decisions 4 years ago around this time about, how do we face the unknown? How do we deal with the fact that there is no playbook? We're at the start of something where we might not be able to be around each other for years. How do we handle our company? Do we furlough people? Do we lay people off? Do we keep everybody in their roles?
Hmm.
Those decisions demonstrated companies' actual values. And again, I'm not here to shame or to speak badly of anybody, because I'm not them. I don't have their values.
That's
The
right. And you don't,
problem,
I was going to
sorry,
say, and you don't have some of their inherent craziness.
no, I don't. The problem lies when their values that they behave on aren't the values they articulated.
Yep.
it ends up becoming a difference of what I call covert and overt values. There's the overt values, what we put on the wall, what we put on the business cards, what we claim, and at many companies, most people can't name 60% of. And then there's the covert values, which is this is how people actually behave. We may say respect is a value, but the reality is that we all have to defer to the hippo, right? The highest paid
Right.
person's opinion. That might be, that's where the stress comes in. If they say respect at our company is we listen to the hippo, people know what to expect.
Yeah.
They know walking in. That's part of the psychological contract that people unknowingly write when they sign or have written with it. When they sign with an organization, they have an expectation of how they're going to be treated. As the protagonist, I deserve to be treated a certain way. And when I'm not treated a certain way, especially in a way that I expect, I don't like it, and I do things that the company doesn't like. Whether
And
it be become demotivated, be grumble about it,
right.
absentee, leaving, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
that's because the company didn't live up to my expectations of what they were supposed to be.
That's exact and this is a really great example of how um a bigger organization uses marketing because how you the action part of your values is how you're marketing your values. Is it true or is it BS? Because if you're not actioning what you say you are, then we know that it's BS. But this goes true for any sort of small business owner as well. If you're marketing not to get employees, but if you're marketing to get clients, is there consistency there? Is there alignment there? Do you have the capacity to understand Sonder in such a way that you can understand and empathize with and connect with another human being and all of their inherent craziness? I'm going back to this every time. I feel like that should have been the title just because it's so true. Because even if they are the passerby sipping coffee, their lives are just as rich as yours, is just as complex as yours. And so if you lack that ability to understand where they're coming from, your marketing and who you attract or repel will fall flat every time. If you're only looking at, same with these businesses, if these corporations, these bigger organizations are looking to attract employees who are dedicated and committed, then they need to have a good understanding of the types of employees they're going to attract, the types of journeys that they have within the context of their complex lives. We as small business owners, as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, we need to have a good understanding of the complexities of life beyond your basic demographics of age, gender, yada, yada, yada. We need to understand that this person is also potentially at a stage in their relationship when things can get dicey. So we may encounter some interesting emotions around the topic of self-development. Perhaps, like myself, if we're looking at the demographic of millennials. I'm in the latter end of the millennial category. A lot of millennials have children, and they're in that age where if you are still in the coupling that created the child, you might have emotions run high. You might not get a full night's sleep all the time. You might be juggling extracurriculars with your business, with maybe even a part-time job, with this, with and now we're juggling. And here's your craziness: we're juggling, we're trying, and now you're trying to use your marketing in a way to attract them, but all you know is that they're this age, and this is kind of something that they happen to do. We're missing that Sonder aspect, the Sonder effect, the understanding that there is so much more to that person, and who am I? So how do I show up in a way that catches their attention and shows them that I care, that I get it, and that I'm here for them?
And Sonder helps you get past that demographics even concept, right? Because it's an understanding that you may fit certain demographics and the person sitting right next to you might be in the exact same demographic range with a completely different experience, with a
Yes.
completely different
Yes.
life of being single or dual income, no kids, or they may have, parents who are aging parents who are living at home. They may be dealing with a longer commute if you're forced to go into the office. I mean, going back to COVID, a great expression I heard is we may be all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat.
Yes.
And the appreciation that, you know, employee surveys only go so far because you're getting sort of the general perspective. But that's only going to get you the broad topics and some general directions. But when it comes to the individual level, you need to understand that each person is showing up for their own reasons. You might you might even have done a great job, understanding your employee demographic and understand that broadly they think this way. But one, seeking that out only when you're hiring is going to reduce that level of diversity.
Right.
But it's also a lack of understanding that they might broadly think that way, but not everybody does think that way. And when it comes to your team, when you're a leader, there are no random passerbys with coffee. There is no random lighted window at dusk. They're all protagonists that you need to understand, even if you're not a human centric person, even if you're not the kind of person who cares at the end of the day how they feel, even if you're just one of those people who cares about productivity and retention.
Sure. You still need to know.
Understanding the person, not the resource or the job or the role, but the person who's living that role, will help you put them in a position to be most productive, to stay longer, not for any kind of, oh, I did it because I love growing my team. Not everybody does. I understand that.
Hmm.
I get that different people have different values, but even if you're looking at it from the business perspective of, I want my team to be motivated, work hard, and stick around because that's good for the company. Understand them. Understand what makes them tick. What are they thinking and how are they feeling at the end of the day? Right? Are they excited to go back home, or is there something stressing them out when they
Right.
go back home? This
Right.
is a whole person. You're not going to be able to handle all of their issues, but just starting by understanding them. The number of times I've heard of, stories of a great employee has a reason why their performance dips, but the manager doesn't care about that and starts to punish them over time or puts them on a PIP or whatever it is, without understanding either the temporary nature or the solvable nature of the issue. And they just blame the employee.
Right.
It reminds me of, there was this post I saw on LinkedIn recently. I'll make up a number because the number in this case doesn't really matter. But the number was, we'll say 54% of new employees fail or new hires fail.
Right.
And for me, the phrasing of that is the opposite of Sonder. For me, the phrasing of that is those people failed. When the reality, because the player with the greater amount of power and control of the overall system is the organization.
Right.
The organization fails 54% of new hires.
There you go.
That's what happens. Maybe they hired the wrong person. Maybe they didn't have effective onboarding. Maybe they had, you talked about marketing and internal marketing and all of that. The problem a few years ago when some HR groups and recruiting groups learned about marketing was that they learned how to do it inauthentically. So what they
Hmm.
knew was, we know the right words to attract a tech hire, a developer, an infrastructure engineer. I know the right words to say it. But when they came behind closed doors and were actually hired, we treated them completely differently.
Yeah.
And that's not a person failing. That's
Hmm.
not a new hire failing. That's a company failing a new hire. And that is one of the reasons why, we talk about demographics, and I'm only so much of a believer in it because I'm a Gen Xer who is very squarely with Gen Zs and millennials of, if you come into a job and they told you it was going to be one thing and you leave quickly, that's not job hopping. That's just not putting up with corporate BS.
Yeah. And that radiates through every day that we're doing things as people. If we are not able, and this is why I love, love, love the term authentic. I know it's a buzzword. I'm full well aware of how much of a buzzword that is. Whether you use authentic, genuine, real, it doesn't matter to me. It's that the fact that that is necessary in order to really cohabitate in a way that respects this Sonder effect, that respects the potential success that we could achieve across the board if we understand that we aren't necessarily the protagonist in everybody's story. And in fact, I have the book here, Building a Story Brand. People have known that I say it all the time. I really love Donald Miller's concept in this, where he says, the client is the hero of their own story, not you. That's how marketing works. That's how life works, for crying out loud. They don't care about my story. They care about their story. And how am I going to use, because I care about my story, obviously, we're going to allow everybody to care about their own stories. But if you have an incentive, if you have something like, I really want to attract this type of client, then I need to know their story almost as well, if not better, than I know my own. And I need to figure out how we can collaborate, start a movement, and really make an impact in that capacity, in a way that's authentic, in a way that is meaningful in both categories. Because if it's meaningful to you and you're authentic and genuine in how you're marketing yourself in that way, then you're going to attract the people who are on board, who are going to row the boat with you, no matter the storm. And no matter which ship they're on, they're going to kind of join your fleet, so to speak. And that makes a difference. The people who don't belong, well, they won't. And that's okay. They can take their protagonist energy and go and live their life. And I'll be that extra sipping coffee. I mean, as long as it's a latte, I got a bit of a sweet tooth, but no black coffee for me. But that's just the reality of it. You're the protagonist of your story. They're the protagonist of theirs. If you want to make ripples, you need to understand that and respect that. Well, I don't know if it's a law of nature, but just respect it. Now, with that, it's such a philosophically, potentially deep concept if you really want to keep digging into it. So I want to ask you, Gil, if there's anything that we didn't cover in our conversation that you feel like would be a great something that you need to share to get people to at least start the conversation within their own world, start thinking about it. And then, of course, tell them where to get to know you, because this type of conversation requires, in my humble opinion, requires a person like you who can sit with it, dissect it, and understand the different applications of this concept called Sonder.
So one of the things that you triggered a thought in my head, or in that last statement where you're talking about in terms of marketing and authentic, and I'll be honest, I'll defend authentic as a buzzword, and there's other buzzwords I will defend because there's a reason cliches become cliches. But there's a phrase I think that, it was hard for me to recognize, but I think when it comes to, you're talking about marketing and, bringing people in or pushing people away, is there's a phrase of, I'm not for everyone. And that's true for all of us. We all have certain beliefs, certain values, certain where we are at this stage of our life that doesn't or doesn't align with other people. Understanding who we are and trying to understand where other people are coming from helps create that clarity, because when we're coming from such different angles, from such different perspectives, sometimes we're not even speaking the same language.
Right.
That's why I refer to, when it comes to values, you need to articulate them in a way that people know exactly what you mean. Otherwise, when it's left to each individual subjective interpretation, that's when people act inconsistently. And then each person's sonder is kind of thrown off. Each person's internal being is thrown off because I was told when I was hired that we were going to be treated a certain way, and now I'm not being treated a certain way. That's not good for the individual, and it's not good for business. To talk more about this kind of concept with me, you can find me either at my website, www.employeeexperience.ca. You know you spelled it right when there are three E's in the middle. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Gil Cohen. And I'd love to chat about this topic and more. Talking about people at work is a passion of mine. My company's vision is to make the world a better place to work. We spend so many hours at work. We're better off making it better. So many people are miserable. When Gallup has a all-time high of 36% of employees are engaged, that's not a good thing.
That's right. I love that. And yes, I encourage everybody to reach out to Gil to have this conversation about Sonder and more, to figure out how can you actually take this concept combined with values, combined with action, and implement it within your own business to make sure that you're making the best, most positive impact on our world as that you can. And now with that, I hope that you join the conversation. Leave comments. Make sure that you share with your friends who might want to keep this ball rolling. And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got new videos coming out every week talking about concepts like Sonder and a wide variety of other fun stuff in the marketing space. Because remember, you're never not marketing. So there's always something to say. We'll chat soon.